Welcome to this Product Focus webinar. It's part of a series of webinars aimed at providing insights, best practice, tools and ideas you can use to help improve product management and product marketing in your business. My name is Ian Lunn. I'm one of the founding directors of Product Focus. I've got over 25 years experience in product management and I've worked in companies of all shapes and sizes. And I'm joined by my fellow director, Andrew Dickinson.
Hi, I'm Andrew. I've been working in product management and product marketing almost as long as Ian, perhaps even longer. So who are we? Well, we're Europe's leading product management and product marketing training business with a focus on technology-based products. We've worked with a range of companies from startups to mid-sized and multinationals from around the world.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, if I may, is hand over to Bruce to tell us about roadmaps are dead. Long live roadmaps, please. So Bruce, over to you.
Thanks very much, Ian. Appreciate the introduction, and I want to talk a little bit about roadmaps today because it's a popular subject, but it's also a controversial one. It's also one that people struggle with. You know, sometimes they're not sure whether to love or to hate roadmaps, not sure whether to really invest time in them or avoid them at all costs. So my co-authors and I created a book called Product Roadmaps Relaunched to try to dive directly into this topic. And I'm going to give you the basic thesis of that book in our discussion today. And then I hope to have some lively discussion afterward. How do we move on to the next slide? Is that under my control? There we go. So there's a little bit of a build here. So you can click on a bit. The story starts with failure. The story starts with the fact that Google has become rather well known over the past few years for canceling products, for shutting them down. There's a couple of different social networks that they've shut down over time. They've shut down chat. They've shut down a lot of different things over time. Let's keep going. I did a Google search on discontinued products mentioned on Wikipedia, and this almost endless crawl of products that we as an industry had killed turned up here with lots and lots of images of sad things, including the PlayStation portable device that I used to have years ago that they discontinued. And I think that this is not unique to Google or PlayStation. I think that as an industry, we are maybe not that good at predicting what is going to be successful. If you look at studies from the Standish Group, they do this survey every couple of years. 50% of the features that we ship in our products are seldom or never used. That means our hit rate is no better than 50-50 on features that really deliver value, that people actually want to use and actually do use. That's not great. We could be better. And honestly, I think roadmaps, committing in advance to the things we're going to build before we really know if they're the right thing, get a lot of the blame. Why, as an industry, do we make the wrong thing? We know that we're supposed to do this, right? We've been taught by the lean startup movement that we're supposed to build, measure, and learn in a quick succession, in as fast a learning loop as we possibly can. But what do we actually do? Let's be honest. Most of us, we do this. We build and ship and we build and ship and we build and ship some more because there's pressure to ship the next thing. And we often don't stop to ask, did the last thing we build teach us anything, or did it actually work in terms of meeting the needs of the customer or meeting the needs of our business? And I think the industry kind of woke up to this a few years ago and began, maybe more than a few years ago now, and began to reject the idea of roadmaps. So you saw a whole raft of articles out there, I did, on why most product roadmaps are a train wreck, why they suck, why roadmap first teams are just disasters waiting to happen. And by the way, why you should use our obscure planning methodology instead. And why they're a waste of time. For me, when I was doing research for the book, I did a whole bunch of interviews with Well-known folks in the product firmament, such as David Cancel, CEO of Drift and former head of product for HubSpot here in the Boston area. And he kind of encapsulated the no-win scenario that most of us feel when we think about roadmaps. If you commit to what you're going to deliver over time, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to deliver those things when you've learned that they're actually not the right thing anymore, in which case you've failed, or you're not going to deliver those things because you learned better, in which case you've lied. So which is it? Are you dishonest or incompetent? Roadmaps force you to choose one of those answers, it kind of seems like, but I don't think it needs to be that bad. But that's what it feels like, and that's what it felt like to me. In fact, I know that it feels like that to a lot of you because I do workshops all the time on how to build roadmaps. And the first thing I always ask them to do in the workshops, the students, is to write a breakup letter, a dear roadmap letter with their current road mapping process. And one of my favorites is this one. I've collected a whole bunch of them over time. Dear roadmap, I've been putting in so much energy to get this relationship working, but it feels like I only give and never get any value back from you. You are always out of date. There's no way to keep all the information in and keep it looking nice and readable. You're always about solutions and not about the needs or the problems. You're never good enough for all my different stakeholders. That's it. I'm going back to Microsoft Project. And to me, that also kind of encapsulated the frustration that everyday product managers feel about it. Let me take you back in time to my first attempt a decade ago now, a little bit more, at a real enterprise product roadmap. I slaved over this for weeks, and you can see the level of effort that I put into it. It's a traditional 3 swim lanes roadmap with 3 different core areas that we were investing in. It's quarterly at the beginning, and then it goes into half years. And there's a lot of detail here. There's a lot of pretty obscure technobabble. And if that weren't enough, there's a bunch of acronyms. So there's a key in the upper right-hand corner, and there's version numbers in it, and there's a footnote just for completeness, of course. And if that wasn't enough detail for you, I even had in PowerPoint pop-ups to explain some of the more obscure bits. So lots and lots of information. But I got to admit, when I put this in front of people, when I tried to explain my roadmap to people, I kind of got this kind of blank look from them. It was basically like, whatever, I guess, sure. Nobody was enthusiastic. Nobody was enlightened. Nobody was inspired. It was kind of like, okay, I guess you have a roadmap. And that's not what we're aiming for with roadmaps. For a while, I kind of gave up. I kind of was like, are roadmaps helping me here? Are they good? Are they bad? Should I do them? I'm not really sure. I kind of decided that roadmaps suck. And I decided I'm just going to go back to build, measure, learn. I'm not going to talk about the future. I'm just going to try to find my way there step by step, incrementally. Until I talked to this guy, another interview that I did, Jeff Busgang, a VC in the Boston area and a former product manager. And he said to him, roadmaps matter. You can't build a great company unless you have a strategy. And to him, a roadmap is evidence of strategy. In fact, he pretty much said, I'm not investing in your startup if you don't have a clear roadmap. So crap. Roadmaps are signing up for doom, and yet they're absolutely necessary. What he was saying here, though, is not that he insisted on any particular format of roadmap or any particular approach to road mapping, but that he just wanted evidence of strategy. And therein lay, I think, the kernel of a different approach to road mapping that I want to talk about. I went back to the drawing board and I asked myself, maybe I'm doing this wrong. What really is a roadmap? What's the job to be done with a roadmap if it's not just to get me in trouble? Maybe actually a roadmap is not a release plan or a project plan or a set of commitments to features and dates. Maybe it's not that at all. Maybe it's something else. So let me give you an example of a company who kind of went through the journey that I went through. This is a company in the United States called Wodify. They sell to gyms, not a very high-tech sort of space, but they're trying to bring technology into the typically meathead, lots of heavy weights, heavy iron sort of gym space. And they decided that they wanted to communicate better with their customers, and they decided they were going to put on their website publicly a roadmap of what was coming out. And their first attempt at that looked like this. They had a bunch of different things coming on specific dates with interesting sounding but kind of cryptic names: Wodify Pulse, Leads Insights, Wodify Rise, Arena V2 coming on December 11th, 2017. So they had really specific dates, really specific deliverables, and the magic relationship improving effect that they wanted to have with their customers did not emerge when they published this. In fact, just the opposite. They got a lot of confused questions about what the heck is Wodify Rise and why should I be interested in it, and why, since it's now December 25th, is it late? And they were starting to run into exactly the disaster scenario, the no-win scenario. So they decided to take a step back, ask themselves why they were wanting to put a roadmap out in the first place, and change their approach. The first thing they did was they took the dates off of most things and just said, coming soon. The next thing they did was they made it so that when you looked at a particular one of these cards on their website, you could actually, and then the slide doesn't show it, but you could actually, oh, there it is, at the bottom one. You could flip it over and find out what problem are they trying to solve. Major usability enhancements to the appointments and provider availability calendars. Okay, that tells me that you're trying to make the calendar easier to use. And that sounds like a solution to a problem without committing to exact details or a screenshot or a spec or anything like that. And that actually improved the relationship with the customers. They set up essentially a constructive dialogue using this kind of roadmap that set a direction without getting bogged down in precise features and dates. So yeah, I had to ask myself then, if we're going to remove features and dates from the roadmap, what should be in the roadmap? What's left if you take out all the features and dates? And it turns out a lot of roadmaps are actually missing what I would consider the most essential components. And in order to make a roadmap into a strategic communications tool, which is what I really think it needs to be. Janet Bastow, CEO of ProdPad and a good friend, says that she feels like a product roadmap is a prototype of your strategy. It starts a dialogue about strategy with your stakeholders and with your customers and allows you to build, test, and learn on that. And I thought that was a brilliant statement. She wrote the introduction to my book. So a roadmap, if done right, I think is less a list of features and dates and more a statement of intent and direction of strategy. It's less like turn-by-turn directions and more like a GPS. Think about how we use a GPS in the real world. We put in the destination and it gives us a route, a set of directions step by step to get there, but it adjusts. It adjusts course when conditions change. If traffic gets worse, or if construction turns up, or if you just decide to stop off for pizza and make a detour, then it's going to recalculate and tell you what's the best route that it knows about from right now to get you toward your destination. And a roadmap should be like that. It should be more flexible. It should be how you plan or foresee at this moment the best route to get to your destination, your product vision out there in the future. A roadmap then is about outcomes. It's about outcomes for the customer and it's about outcomes for the business. Whereas a project plan, a release plan, a program is about the outputs that hopefully will get you to those outcomes. It's the feature list and the dates. Those are really two different things. They need to work together. We need to have both. They need to inform each other. But it starts, I think, with the roadmap, with what is the destination and what do we think are the big steps to arrive at that destination. Now, at this point, you're thinking, okay, well, what does this strategic roadmap with no features and dates look like? And I'm going to disappoint you a little bit by saying that I have seen really good, compelling strategic roadmaps in lots of different forms. I think you can do it in a Kanban board. I think you can do it in PowerPoint. I think I've seen it in a spreadsheet or in stickies on a wall or a 5-page memo. I don't think the form matters. I think it's about the content. I think it's about the level of the dialogue that you're having with your stakeholders. I do think there are some core components that really need to be included in any roadmap. And many of them, like I said, are kind of missing in action in a lot of very concrete roadmaps. Those 5 components are these: product vision, business objectives, timeframes of some sort, themes, which I'll go into in a little bit of detail, and a disclaimer, the weasel words at the bottom that say it's subject to change. I'll talk a little bit about each one of these components before we move on. The product vision, I think, is probably one of the most important ones. It's that destination. It's how a future world will benefit from your product when it's fully realized. So I don't think a valid product vision is to be the number one such and such in the such and such category. That's a business objective. Maybe market share could measure whether you're number one, and that's not a bad thing by itself. But a product vision should focus on the customer and how the customer benefits. So to just give you an example, the most famous one I know of is Google has this overall mission as a company, as we all know, to organize all of the data in the world and make it accessible to everyone in a useful way. What's less well known is that each one of their products also has a consistent vision for what they are trying to achieve for the customer. The browser, Chrome, has a mission to provide a fast and simple, secure browser for everyone to experience the modern web. The customer, everyone, and experience the modern web is the benefit. And YouTube, give everyone a voice and show them the world. And Android helps people have greater access to information on mobile. All of these are consistent with the overall Google mission, but all of them are distinct to that product. All of them mention the customer. In Google's case, because they're so large, they just mention people. But if you had an enterprise product, you could talk about a particular industry, for example. The flip side of that future vision is what's good for your company. It's the business objectives. And if you have an internal version of a roadmap, it should have business objectives about what will be measurably different for your organization, whether it's revenue or market share or number of users or conversion rate or some quantifiable business metric that tells you that you're on the right track and that is consistent with your strategy and the stage of life of your product. This is where OKRs, for example, would dovetail with your roadmap. An example that I sort of like to talk about is this one from a company called Stellar, which is a company that runs an exchange for electronic currencies. And their favorite business metric is something they call randos. And it turns out that that is their own made-up metric. It's random people talking about cryptocurrency on the internet, which I thought was fun and sounded just silly at first. But then I realized that it's actually they're measuring the expansion of their addressable market. If there is a large amount of discussion, an increasingly widespread discussion of cryptocurrencies on the market, well, a cryptocurrency exchange would stand to benefit from that. They're measuring their TAM essentially by measuring the number of people talking about this on the internet. The time frames, I mentioned we don't want to have features and dates, but people do expect some kind of time frames in your roadmap, some sort of sequencing, if nothing else. And So I encourage you to be as broad and as vague as you can within the constraints of your business model and the expectations of your stakeholders with your timeframes. I don't want to see December 18th, unless December 19th is perhaps the date that GDPR or some other legal requirement sets in, and you absolutely have to hit that date for some really overriding reason. But otherwise, I want to see broad timeframes. A popular one is quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3, for example. But my favorite one that really illustrates the point is from this screenshot from ProdPad, and that is the dateless roadmap that they've built into their product. The columns here are now, next, and later. Now means these are the things we're actually working on right at the moment. This is in the lab, being worked on by the engineers and the designers and the product managers, and you can expect it to emerge soon. Next is the stuff that's high priority, but that we haven't actually begun. So it is literally next. As soon as resources free up from something in the left column, we will tackle this next. And then later, or sometimes this is labeled under consideration or maybe. This is it's on the roadmap, but we don't have a date for it. We don't know exactly when we'll start. And if you think about it, there are really only three questions that people ask about dates and features. One is it on the roadmap? And this style answers that question. Another is it coming relatively soon? And this style answers that question too. And the third one is it coming on a specific date? And this does not answer that. And I would encourage you to ask yourself, do I really need to give a date if I'm not sure? Maybe the dates are for the project plan. And maybe the timeframes that my roadmap can see to, we would like to do, these things in the next column at some point soon, and we would like to do these things in the later column at some point, but we don't know when. Maybe that view of the roadmap goes out further than the project plan or the release plan. If we think about it, our ability as an industry to predict exactly when we're going to ship features is pretty poor. Most of the companies I work with struggle to get an accurate forecast for 6 weeks or for any further out than, say, 6 weeks. A whole quarter is a little bit difficult to predict precisely what you will get in or not get in with quality. So should we restrict our roadmaps to 6 weeks worth of time? Well, no, but that's for the delivery plan. But the roadmap could go out months or even years into the future, talking about the strategic objectives of the organization. So let's separate the two. And that dividing line is really where the timeline and the specificity comes in. The disclaimer I mentioned is another core component that you need. I like to use it as not just weasel words that say this is subject to change at the bottom of the slide or a safe harbor statement, but I like when I'm talking to a stakeholder or a customer to actually call it out and say, hey, one of the ways in which this roadmap may change is if you tell me something convincing that I didn't know. If you give me new context, new information about the market or about your needs, and this is the third time I'm hearing it, maybe I need to change something about my roadmap. And then when you set up a conversation that way with a stakeholder, then it's less about a bunch of promises that I'm going to try to hold you to as a stakeholder, and more about a dialogue of what's important to you, and can you convince me that I should change something? And that's a really productive conversation, I think, to be having with your customers and your stakeholders. GitHub has a disclaimer exactly like this. This is their public-facing roadmap, and you can see it says disclaimer down the bottom. And if you zoom in, it just says it's informational purposes, it's subject to change, etc. So everybody's doing it. The last and probably most important component that I want to talk about is the themes. This is the guts of the roadmap, the what's in all the cells in your table, if you've built it as a PowerPoint table. And rather than features, what I want you to think about putting into your roadmap is problems to be solved for the customer, or jobs to be done, or market needs, whatever your favorite way of expressing externally what you're aiming for, this is where that goes in the roadmap. And it's important to say, this is what we're aiming for, not this is precisely what we're going to do. Not only because what we're precisely going to do might be wrong or might not work on the first try, but because we tend as an industry to lose sight of the why when we focus so much on the what. I think that we often fail at delivering the right stuff because we get too bogged down in the details. So the themes are not a list or even a grouping of features. The themes are problems, needs, jobs to be done. I think about it like this. So this is a cartoon I found on a blog called useronboard.com. If we think about Mario, what does Mario want? He wants to win the game, and in order to win the game, he would really be helped out by becoming Super Mario. He's going to eat the flower, get the power up, and he's going to become Super Mario. He's going to be twice as big, he's going to be twice as fast, he's going to be invulnerable, and he's going to shoot freaking fireballs. He's going to be an awesome version of himself. And if you think about what does Mario really want, he doesn't really want the flower. The flower is a means to an end. What he wants is to be Super Mario and to be super rad. So think about your product that way and think about your roadmap that way. What problems does Mario need to solve? Well, he's got enemies. So maybe we can make him invulnerable. Maybe we can make him shoot fireballs. Maybe we can make him fast. He's also got to worry about time. So when you think about your product, think about what you're really selling as the benefit rather than as the flower, Super Mario rather than the power up. Let me show you a real world roadmap that works like that. This is just in Trello, and it's a company called Vempathy that they put together a product. It's software that runs on your phone, and it uses the sensors on your phone to detect your emotions by reading your facial expression, the movement of the phone, and the sounds you're making. It senses your emotion while you're looking at something. And so it's useful for user testing, for advertisements, for games, for all sorts of things where it's useful to know where does the customer look happy or look frustrated. This is their real actual roadmap. And this is a real card on the roadmap. Every one of the cards on their roadmap is not a feature, it's a problem. And in this case, this one is participant recruiting for research studies. The problem statement is UX researchers often struggle to get test participants for their studies. The desired outcome is that every study should have the right number and type of participants. And here's the crucial part. There are 3 different ideas about how we might solve that problem. We might partner with a company, we might create a recruitment tool or survey ourselves, or we might integrate with a third party. The card doesn't get required when we build one or more of those ideas. The card gets retired from the roadmap when we solve the problem. And these are just 3 things we could test to see if we can solve the problem effectively. And if we can't, well, maybe we need a 4th idea. Maybe none of these are going to be adequate, or maybe 2 in combination will solve the problem. We won't know until we're done. So there's no date on this card, and there's 3 different ideas of features for what to do. Similar example, this is a company in the UK called Threads that has a personal shopper service that you can access over text. And they wanted to improve the client payment experience. The problem is that clients want to be able to pay using credit cards, Apple Pay, and Alipay. The current situation, though, is inadequate. Shoppers need to confirm a payment method with the client. That's the personal shopper needs to confirm it with their client before sending a link, because they need to know which link to send for which payment type. And that causes delay and reduces the close rate. So the new solution that they proposed is a unified single link that they can send that allows the user to choose which payment method to use. Fewer steps, less uncertainty, higher close rate. They designed the solution, which they still needed to test, with the goal clearly stated in the roadmap. So I want us to adopt a different mindset for roadmaps. It's not about committing to dates. It's about managing to outcomes. A bad roadmap statement would be, we're going to launch the thing, version 4.1 of it, on a particular date. A better one would be, we're going to launch it in order to reach a goal, to increase signups by 25%. But the best possible roadmap item would be, we're going to figure out how to increase signups by 25% by removing certain obstacles that the user experiences. How are we going to remove those obstacles? We'll figure it out. But right now, we know that those obstacles are reducing signups, and we think we can solve this problem. And that's what we want on the roadmap. So to bring it full circle, why do I think we make the wrong thing as an industry? I think that a traditional approach to road mapping, a commitment-based approach that focuses on features and dates, drives us to commit too early to untested ideas, to untested outputs, theories, hypotheses about what will work, which, as we've seen, we're only about 50-50 on hitting whether they will actually work. So rather than commit to particular outputs, I want us to commit to allowing the build, measure, learn loop to work inside of a roadmap, allowing ourselves, when writing a roadmap, the ability in the future, down the road in the roadmap, to build, measure, and learn and figure out what's really going to work, to test our way to success within a roadmap. Let me give you a real world example. This is a real roadmap from a team inside of a well-known music streaming service that I am not allowed to name. And their quarterly roadmap, done in Google Sheets, has 3 possible states for every item in it. One is think it. That's the design, discovery, development process. The next is ship it. We're actually finishing it and getting it out into the world in a given quarter. But then you'll see, look at member chat improvements to the customer experience for member chat in one of the high up rows here. After we ship it in Q1, we're going to spend 4 quarters or more. We're going to spend all of a year after that tweaking it. Tweaking it is the process of testing and learning and trying some changes and seeing how we can optimize it using metrics like CSAT, for example. So our roadmaps really, I think, need to be about problems to solve rather than specific results. Ellie Rijo, product manager at Wodify, that gym technology company, says, we accept that we don't know which specific features we're going to build in advance, and we give the teams the freedom to figure out the feature level stuff as they go. Product management is not the same thing as project management. We get confused between those two. They're only a couple of letters apart, right? But they're really not the same thing. They need to work together, but they're working on different timescales and they're working with different goals in mind. Projects are about shipping, which is necessary, but products and product management are about success. They're about meeting the user's goals and about meeting the business's goals. And there's a feedback loop between the two, but we shouldn't confuse them. This is the book that I've been speaking about, Product Roadmaps Relaunched, from O'Reilly. It came out in 2017, but it has become kind of the standard text on road mapping. I wrote it and designed it with these 3 other guys. Michael Connors is on here as a 4th author because so that I can say, I want you to buy the paper version, not the ebook version, because we worked really hard on the layout. It's set up as kind of a manual that you can lay out on your desk with one concept that you may need beside you as you work on that part of your roadmap. And it just loses something in the Kindle version. So if you're interested in that, check it out. I do have a couple of other upcoming events I thought I would mention with the How to Web Institute. We're going to be doing OKRs for product teams and a deep dive on how to actually develop roadmaps of the style that we've just been talking about today. And I'm going to do a similar one-day masterclass on building outcome-based roadmaps with UX Fest. All of these coming up in the next month. Also, I didn't have time to put it on the slide, but I'm going to be talking about OKRs for product teams at Product Camp Online, which is an America's consolidated online product camp that's happening in the first week of June. I think it's next Friday, not this coming Friday, but the one after. And then lastly, just to wrap up, if you like what I've been saying and you want to learn more about product culture, about roadmaps and all the different OKRs and all the different techniques and components and so on, I have what I call a nano letter. That's a super short newsletter weekly on Thursdays that comes out. It's really as short as it looks like in this screenshot. It's really one idea, one bite-sized thing to think about in your product or your practice of product culture per week. And that's all I have. Before we go to Q&A, I'll hand it back to you, Ian, for a wrap up.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Bruce. That was excellent. So if you have any questions, please enter them, put them into the question panel on the right-hand side. I don't promise we can get through all of them, depending on how many we get, but please do add your questions there. Just while you may be starting to do that, I'll just give a summary of what we can do at Product Focus. We can do our public training where you can turn up and attend our course to learn about best practice in product management, or we can do private on-site training for your company. We offer our leading product management course and reviews of product management. So please do check us out if you're interested in any of that. Okay, so let's now go to the questions, and there's I see quite a number of questions have come in, so I do apologize if we don't have time to answer all the questions. I'm going to pick on the first one from Bram. So I'm Bruce, I'm going to be looking in your direction to answer them, but I'm happy to chip in if need be. If the roadmap should create dialogue, I presume there is nothing wrong then in leveraging a roadmap to invite B2B customers to co-create around certain topics which may be somewhat further ahead or require more input for a valid product approach to materialize.
Yeah, actually, I agree with that entirely. In fact, it goes right back to my interview with David Cancel at Drift. I asked him, so what do you do for roadmaps? And the first thing he said actually was, I don't do roadmaps. And then he said about, they're a no-win scenario and so on. I'm like, well, but then how do you communicate strategy and direction? And he said, oh, well, we have these things we call themes. And then he described exactly what I describe as a thematic outcome-based roadmap. The next bit of the conversation was exactly your question. He said, what we do is we go and cooperate and collaborate directly with our customers. So we often get some of the larger enterprise customers demanding that we commit to features and dates. And we turn that around and say, tell me, you're really interested in this feature. Why is that? What problem are you trying to solve? What benefit are you hoping will accrue if we build this? Oh, well, it'll solve this and that and the other thing. Oh, really? Okay. Tell me how you think it will solve that problem. Let's dig in and let's consider 2 or 3 or 4 alternative solutions to that problem. And let's debate the pros and cons, customer, vendor, and let's have that conversation. I'm inviting you into my process. I'm inviting you to tell me your priorities, and then I'm going to have the same conversation with 10 other customers, and I'm going to integrate and balance all of that. And that's going to inform my roadmap. And I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to say, let me tell you why you don't actually want the feature you asked for, because I have learned that the best way to solve this problem, technically, business-wise, and in terms of usability for you and your team, is this other solution. and let me demo let me show you our wireframes, and let's continue that dialogue. I think that's the healthiest way to use a roadmap with B2B customers.
Thank you, Bruce. There is a question here from Alberto. Now, it was during the talk, and so it may have been answered later on, but Alberto asked how to place themes that take up more than one period of time. Could you talk to that one, do you think?
Sure. Well, first, if you're using the now, next, later roadmap, then the time span of each individual item on the roadmap is not shown, really. The things that are in now, some of them may not take long, some of them may take a long period of time. So if you've really divorced yourself from dates entirely in your roadmap, then you don't have this problem. But if you do use, say, quarters, then you can show a theme spanning over multiple quarters, or you can have a phase one, phase two sort of approach if you have an idea of how you want to chunk it out. Like maybe if you're one of the examples in our book is we talk about a fictitious roadmap for a made-up garden hose company that is coming out with different versions of their hose over time. And so, although they're always selling a hose, they're solving the fragility problem. The indestructible hose is the first step, and then they're going to solve the winterization problem by making the severe weather handling hose. These are multiple themes, but on one product. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Bruce. There's a really interesting question here from Marta. Do you have a good suggestion for convincing your sales teams that your next roadmap won't have specific timeframes on it? It's always a struggle between product management and sales. And I can see that if you're stuck in that world and suddenly you want to move to this brave new world you're describing, how do you make that leap?
Actually, yeah, I'm going to borrow a story from Saeed Khan, who had a real heart-to-heart with his sales team when he shifted to this type of roadmap. He shifted to a thematic roadmap, problems to solve, no dates. And the sales team, just as you would imagine, said, well, wait a second, then what can we hold you to? And he said, can I hold you to closing the Google deal this quarter? And the salespeople were like, wait, that's totally different. And he's like, really? How different is that? Well, you have control over, the engineers and the resources and what they build. Yes, but there's a certain unpredictability in A, how much can they get done in the time? B, will it work technically? And C, will it solve the customer's problem? Which is very much like your problem as a salesperson. You know that you have a number to hit. You know you have objectives, outcomes to hit, right? But you don't know exactly which deals you're going to be able to close this quarter. You're just going to try to learn and iterate until you can get something really close to that number out of some combination of different possible solutions. And it's exactly like that, salespeople, in product development. We don't know in advance exactly how long things are going to take, exactly which ones are going to work out. And so we're going to commit to some kind of number, some outcome, some business outcome, or some customer problem solved, and a way of measuring that. But we're not going to commit to exactly how we get there, just like you don't in managing your pipeline. Why is the rule of thumb that your pipeline needs to be 3 times larger than the number you want to hit, depending on your business? Because you don't know which deals are actually going to come through in advance. You can't know. Now that said, you can come to maybe some emotional understanding with your sales team at that point in time, but they're still going to come back to you and say, okay, maybe I understand the uncertainties involved, maybe I don't, but still I need certain features to close certain deals. And that's a sort of reality, especially when you're talking about large account sales. And so I encourage you to consider situations like that and be willing on an exception basis for sufficient reasons to have a sort of scorecard and criteria for when you will accept a particular feature for a particular deal as part of the overall process. or where certain requirements must be met by a certain date. We mentioned GDPR earlier, but commitments to the board or a contract that the entire executive team said is large enough to justify it. We're going to commit to a feature on a date. Those are strategic decisions that you need to occasionally make as an exception as well.
Good answer. Good answer. Very good answer. It's a good question here from Gabrielle. It's about kind of the mechanics, I guess, of getting from the theme-based roadmap down to your epics and user stories if you're using that Scrum approach in Agile. So Gabrielle says, once we research a solution based on the theme-based roadmap, do we put this feature in the form of epics and then cut it into user stories and tasks? So do you have any recommendations on sort of how that link is between the themes on the roadmap and then your perhaps delivery plan or your user stories and backlog?
Yeah, actually, I think you've described it just right. That's how I would normally think about doing it. And if you think about how user stories and epics should be written, right? They should be user-based and goal-oriented. They should be, as a type of customer, I want because in that form. And an epic is just a bigger version of that. It should be written in kind of the same format. So you should be able to actually link directly from a theme statement on your roadmap to one or more epics and then break it down into stories and tasks and so on. The difference is in time frame. That's only one of the many things on your roadmap, and it may break down into a number of epics and stories that may take you quite some time to work your way through. The other thing that is often missing that you didn't mention that I want to make sure we throw in is some measures of success. Whether that's OKRs or simply a statement to the effect of, we will know we have solved the problem when, and then follow it with something measurable. Like we see the CSAT go up, or we see the usage of the feature reach a certain level, or we see daily active users, something along those lines, so that you can convince yourself that you can retire this item, this problem statement from the roadmap as done, because you've seen evidence that the problem is solved.
Thank you very much. I think one of the question here from Anurag, all items on the roadmap aren't equal, so some are more important than others. How might you show that?
Great question. So prioritization, absolutely, you're right, is key. First, I don't want anything on the roadmap that isn't important at all. It's not important that we talk about things that aren't important. Seems self-evident when I say it that way, right? So your roadmap doesn't have to have everything on it. Your release notes should have everything on it. And maybe your release plan or your project plan needs to incorporate everything you're working on. But since the roadmap is a strategic communications tool, let's keep it at the strategic level. But even within that, you're still right that certain things are more important than others. And so I had a boss once who taught me, just drilled it into all of our heads, that every list of anything that he ever saw should be in priority order. And so even in a now, next, later roadmap, I want to see the most important item at the top of the now column, and then down and down and down. In chapter 7 of my book, there are 5 different ways to prioritize that we describe, and when you might use each. But I think order is the number one way to describe priorities on a roadmap. You could also color code them or give them stars or something else. But I'd start with order and then always say, and by the way, these are in priority order.
Thank you very much indeed, Bruce. I think we'll end it there. I really appreciate you spending the time talking about roadmaps to us. It's been really, really interesting. And we hope to see you on another webinar in the future, or one of our courses, or working with Bruce in some way. Would love that to be the case. So thank you very much indeed, and have a great day.
Thank you, Ian. And thank you, everybody, for the great questions. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for listening to our webinar. Don't forget, we have lots of free best practice resources that you can sign up for at our website. We run our public courses across the world and anyone can attend. We also review product management and companies and run private training courses just for them. Good luck with your product management.